This is Mainstreet with Gary Allen. Now, here's Gary.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Mainstreet. Gary Allen with you, as I am on every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Last week was a little different, but this week we're right back on track again here on the C News Network. And if it wasn't for the Miller brothers, I wouldn't be on this network at all. And I want to thank Michael and Grant for that opportunity. We've got a very interesting show for you today. I hope since we met last that you have been safe and sound and your family and you are doing quite well. But before we get into today's show, and I have a terrific guest for you, an absolutely fabulous guest, and we'll get to Dr. Lomasky in just a couple of seconds. I want to thank, first of all, my executive producer, Mr. Rick Del Vecchio, for putting everything together for me as he does for every show. My studio producer, Andreas, who's controlling all the bells and whistles. Michael and Grant Miller, thank you so much for this platform on the C News Network, where we are heard every Tuesday at 2 p.m., along with other great shows. Check out the website. I believe the website is communitynews.com or something along those lines. Andreas will put it on the bottom of the screen here for the website where you can check where things are. Our community sponsors, the Japanese Garden of Miami and the Elks Lodges of South Florida. I just want to thank them so much for their continued support of keeping this program on the air. My guest this afternoon is a unique guest in that normally we have someone from show business or sports, but in a way, this is kind of a sport in a sense, if you want to look at it like that. I have Dr. Janne Lomasky. She is a licensed psychologist and hypnotherapist. She's an author and radio host of her own show on WWNN on Saturdays at 11, along with her co-host, Alan Knight, at 95.3 and 96.9 FM at, as I said, 11 o'clock in the Boca Raton area. She's also the founder of her own private practice, A Healthy Mind for You. In the Boca area, you can reach her at 561-286-8621 if you have any issues that we're going to talk about during this program. And let me just say this, just because you'll hear an issue like anger management issues or parental issues, that doesn't mean everything that we're going to talk about. You may have anger issues. You may not have anger issues. You need to be diagnosed by a professional, not necessarily by me. Dr. Lomasky will give her opinion of her patients that she has. And I can tell you this much, like everything else, every patient is different. Okay, the old biblical saying, there's only one road to God, and that's through Jesus, but there's many roads to Jesus. Okay, there's many reasons why people have anger management issues, anger problems, and you need to see a professional. But we are going to talk about some of the things that she's experienced in her life and what's currently going on in the world environment that we live in. So without further ado, with a little bit of disclaimer there, would you please welcome Dr. Janne Lomasky?
Oh, hello there.
Hello there, young lady. How are you today?
I'm doing great. And thank you so much for having me on your show. I was really, really looking forward to this. I'm so happy we finally connected.
Yes. Yes, I am too. And again, I want to thank Alan Knight. He helped facilitate that connection. And I know Mr. Knight is listening. Alan, how are you? This isn't the Craig Worthing show anymore, but at any particular rate, now Alan is a great producer. When we were both working at WFTL, I don't know if I ever sat in for Craig Worthing, but I think Alan produced a show or two that I probably was hosting. I'm sure at some point we ran across each other.
Alan, I love his radio. He definitely knows. He tells me all the names of the people in radio. He knew you when we first were trying to connect. He knows anyone from radio. I was so impressed. Any name that comes up, I know him. I worked with him. I saw him. I this, I that. So yes, he's very familiar with you and radio.
Oh yeah, he's been around a while. I love your mantra, never give up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is a phrase that we use in show business as a performer, an actor.
Mm-hmm.
But we also emphasize never give up, but eventually someday, in show business anyway, mm-hmm. the door will slam on you and there's no other place to go. But in your case, you're referring to whatever issues you are having,
mm-hmm.
whether they're anger, You're having problems with your mom and dad. You're having problems with your children. You're having problems with your relatives. You're having problems at work, financial issues. Don't give up on them. Keep moving forward. And I'm interpreting what you're meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm wrong, please correct me. But you need each step you take, you're getting closer to getting rid of the problem, figuring out where it stemmed from, and continuing to move forward to get rid of that issue. Am I even close?
Well, you're close. I'm going to get you closer. Most importantly, never give up really means never give up on yourself. So we're going to have problems. We're going to have stressors. We're going to have things that we anticipate, and we're going to have things that we don't anticipate. The point is, when things get very stressful and when things feel like it's hopeless, that's when you really have to tell yourself, don't give up. Just don't give up. You have to keep pushing through. You have to barrel through. You have to jump sometimes. You have to run sometimes. Whatever you have to do, but you don't give up.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, because there are some roadblocks, some bumps along the way that are unexpected, that come out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. But I also am a firm believer in something, because my mother's father, her real father, not her stepfather, but her real father, was a psychiatrist, as well as one of my sisters. Mm-hmm. And I know what I learned over the years, because when I came out of the Air Force, I was living in Chicago. I went to a psychiatrist. I wanted to figure out what was going on with this banana in between my ears, because, and the one piece of advice that I got that I've used ever since is, don't blow whatever situation you are in out of proportion. Keep it in proportion. And just take it one step at a time, and eventually you'll come through the other side. Once you find out what the core that caused it. Now, in my case, it was war. I was a kid. It was Vietnam. It was the war. I had never dealt with those things before. And who has? I mean, nobody has. But for some people, like with anger problems, when you find out what caused those anger problems and you work through it, eventually you come out the other side. One of the things that you have done is that you talk about is the mind and body connection that you have paid a lot of attention to in your practice, and you utilize it in your practice. What did you learn from it, and how does it work for you in your practice dealing with your patients now and their issues?
Well, that's actually the most important thing that I have, is the recognition of the mind-body connection. And when I help my patients and I educate them on the mind-body connection, they actually do better in life in general. Doesn't matter, male, female, child, adult. Once you understand the mind-body connection, you can actually allow yourself to heal quicker and have a better understanding of what's going on. You can't gain insight just from using your mind. Most people live in their heads, and that's not a good place to be. When we live in our heads, we're caught up in our conscious mind. But you know what that does? Our mind, living in your head, only allows you to deny, manipulate, avoid. It can play games on us. If you listen to your body, what's your body doing? Drop down to your stomach, your shoulders, your throat. Is there any discomfort? You have to acknowledge what's happening with your body. You mentioned anger management. So many people come to me without knowing they have anger management issues because they're living in their heads. When I tell them, okay, as you're talking right now, you notice, does your body feel tense? Does your neck feel tense? Do your shoulders feel tense? Why are your fists grasped like this when you're talking about your wife or your child? People don't acknowledge and they don't realize what's really going on because they immediately try to rationalize. We use our defense mechanisms. We rationalize, we intellectualize, we avoid, we deny. That doesn't get us to heal or to even solve the problem. It's just a temporary Band-Aid. So the mind-body connection is really important. to know what you're feeling in your body as certain things are going on in your life. You ever see a certain person, but every time you see that person, you feel tense in your stomach, a tightness in your stomach? Well, our stomach is where our power is. That's our solar plexus. So does that person make you feel like you're giving away your power, or do you feel they're taking away your power? There's so many things that we can understand from being aware of what our body's doing. So this is what I try to educate people on as they come and talk about whatever presenting problem comes their way.
Do people, as you stated, a lot of people are unaware of their anger issues, along with probably other issues for other people. Do people learn to live with whatever that issue is for so long that it becomes part of them? And as you said, they're unaware of whatever it is that's causing these problems. And it's difficult for them to admit that's a problem because it's been part of their lives forever. I mean, I'll give you a real prime example. I have dealt with a lot of sports personalities over the years. Now, my brother was a professional football player. He wasn't into any of that glory and all that other stuff, yet he played in Super Bowls. But he had anger issues his whole life. He was very angry about a lot of things. A lot of the football players I ever came across also deal with attitude issues, egos beyond where they should be. Where and believe it or not, show business people that I dealt with that are still friends of mine to this day, they have very little ego. Their ego is focused on their career, but when they're not, most of my friends, the late Bob Saget, good friend of mine, went to school with him. When he wasn't performing, he was with his wife and stuff. He's a workaholic. He was. But other actors that I know, Kevin Costner, Kevin is not a showbiz kind of a guy. You don't glitz and glamour, see him on magazines. Is it something that we're born with the ego, the anger, the whatever, or is it something that comes along, you get from mom and dad, aunt and uncle, that we formulate these different issues as we start growing up?
Well, it's interesting. You just said it. There's not just one factor. There's many factors that either create and maintain our egos, our anger management issues. It can be part chemical. It could be something from, family. You have people that I'm sure you've heard of the word bipolar disorder or anger management. It could be a genetic thing, but it can also be learned. It can also be environment. And that's why psychology, as wonderful as it is, it's also so complex. And when we try to minimize it, it's not easy. It's really not easy to understand why we feel and behave the way we do. It's just not easy to figure that out. So it takes time. And that's why when people come in and they say, well, how quickly can you fix me? I say, well, how quickly do you want to be fixed? What I tell them,
go over there, lay on the table, and I'll get you muted and just I'll treat you like I do my puppy dog. I'll have you fixed in no time at all.
Well, one of my favorite cartoons, when we used to read the newspaper and watch cartoons, there was the therapist that came in and sat at a desk, and then there was the patient that came in and said they wanted the quick therapy, and you see the therapist slap the patient coming in across the face and said, "You're fixed. That'll be $5 or whatever it was at the time." But like I say, it's a process, and your process is going to be different than my process, and my process will be different than the next person's process. It all depends on how quickly you can gain insight into your pieces of your puzzle. We all come in and we all have a puzzle, and the pieces need to fit in just so. So is it chemical? Is it genetics? Is it learned? Is it environmental? All those things have to make sense, and we have to be willing to accept what it is. I mentioned the anger management because for some reason that is the feeling, that is the emotion that most people want to deny. I say, well, do you have any anger issues? No, I don't. I'm not angry.
I just listen. I just came from killing my husband and wife, or my husband and kids. I got no problems.
Absolutely. And one of the things I have in my office, which I love, I'll have to bring you one. It's called a release hose. It's a release.
What?
it's a release hose. It's called a release hose, and it's like a hose like this, that big, and it is a release hose, and it's made of this very thick rubber. And I will put it in my patient's hands, and I will say, okay, let's talk about something that's upsetting you. But as you're doing it, I just want you to tap down on this pillow. And if I tell you, it's within seconds, people start racking this thing. They're not angry. I said, now put some words to it. And it helps them release. And I say, see, you were angry about that. And then they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Before we continue on, I'm always curious why people become and do what they do. I know why I'm in the show business, radio business, because I'm nuts. But, just ask Alan. He'll tell you point blank. But I know why my sisters became psychologists, and I know why my sister's a psychiatrist, because I finally did one day get them to both confess to why they did. My sister became a psychiatrist because she knew she was gay, but she didn't know how to deal with it. But she's also been fascinated with helping people. And I find people in the medical field have a propensity towards helping people. Like, I have a great deal of empathy, and my heart goes out to people who work in hospice. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. What made you, because you have to decide at a young age, medical school, etc., to become a psychologist?
Well, the interesting part for me is that I thought I was going to become a lawyer. I was a great mediator. I would be able to mediate between my family. I'd be able to mediate between friendships. I was considered the peacemaker. I was the mediator. So I figured, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer because I can go on both sides and find evidence that works, and I can mediate. So I was a political science major and a criminology major. And then one day I got accepted into Nova Law School. And I walked into Nova Law School, and they weren't friendly. And they weren't really nice. And I remember asking someone the time, and they were just kind of cold, and it felt really uncomfortable in there. And I spent the whole day, and I left, and I started to get like upset. And I thought, I can't do this for 3 years. There's no way that this is not what I want. This isn't the experience. Across the street was Nova School of Psychology. I went in, I spoke with an advisor. He was a very interesting man. He was very psychoanalytic, like Freudian. And we talked for a few moments. And at the end of the conversation, he said to me, I think you were born to be what you're going to be. And I said, really? And he said, think about it. Now, I've always been an empath. I was a dancer when I was young. I was in the ballet. I was in pointe. Dancing was a huge part of my life. But I was a very anxious kid. And the only way that I was able to feel comfortable in my own body was when I was dancing. And I would watch all the girls and know exactly what was going on with all these different girls and boys in dance. They had so many problems. There was abuse in the family. There was a lot of anorexia and bulimia going on in the dance world, insecurity, self-esteem issues. And I empathized with all of it. And I thought to myself, this is it. I'm born to heal. I'm born. People have said to me, you make me feel better. You bring out the best in me. You even said to me before that my smile was infectious. It's just me. It's just me. So I fit perfectly into that school of psychology. From the first day I walked in, I said, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Sometimes things, they feel right then and there, and the dreams that you had. Now, I'll give you a little on me. I wanted to be like my father, an airline pilot. Two problems. I suffer from dyslexia, which they didn't discover until I was in my senior year of high school.
Wow.
And that has to do with numbers more than it has to do with anything else.
That's right.
And my vision wasn't up to par. And even though I flew in the Air Force, it was fine. I didn't need glasses back then. But as it was never comfortable for me. I love flying. I do it to this day to a certain extent. But when I went to the University of Miami and I studied journalism and then broadcasting, oh boy, did the light bulb go off. Particularly when I interned for Larry King and my first job at WIOD. and my other job right behind you in the building at 1 Biscayne Boulevard. Man, the lights went on. You're listening to Main Street. Gary Allen with you this afternoon. We have Dr. Janne Lomasky. She's a board-certified psychologist and hypnotherapist. Blah, blah. She's an author, and she has her own radio show on WWNN 95.3 and 96.9 Saturday mornings at 11 a.m. in Boca, along with her co-host. And if I don't mention his name enough, I won't feel as though the $5 he sent me is worth anything. Alan Knight. Good night with All Night with Alan Knight. That's for sure.
That's for sure.
And by the way, do I have issues knowing him? At any particular rate, she also has her own private practice. A Healthy Mind for You is the name of the practice.
Right.
Please look and give her a call if you know people that have problems, need help. We're going to go through a variety of issues here in just a little bit. Her office is in Boca Raton. You can reach her at 561-286-8621. Dr. Janne Lomasky. By the way, I went to put the little thing on the back of your name, the E, on my typewriter, and I couldn't find that little thing to put the E, the little thing on there, and neither could my business partner, and we're both going nuts, you know.
I've needed therapy for that.
Well, there you go again, doctor, and let me say that I was, what was the question? Anyway, doctor, I want to talk about something that I was discussing with my business partner this morning, Rick. How do you explain? I mean, we are just coming out of a pandemic, of which I don't think we'll ever be completely 100% free of. I think it's going to be like the flu. We'll get a good handle on it, and it'll probably be 98% under control. But how do you explain QAnon people who buy into the lies? Come up with this woman. I will tell you a quick story. I was watching TV last night, and this little interview came on with this woman from QAnon that JFK is alive, Michael Jackson is alive, that Trump and Ping, the leader of China, and Putin, as soon as Putin is done taking over Ukraine, they're going, along with the Space Force, which is up here at the Cape, there are going to be trials and tribulations, and Trump will waltz into the White House again. Joe Biden isn't Joe Biden. He was killed in 2019 in Panama City, Florida. He was assassinated. Where do the people who come up with these lies are one thing, but the people that buy into them, I've been fascinated. And I since I don't talk to my sisters, what type of person buys into this? Is it something missing within inside them? I mean, I realize there are a lot of people that hate government and don't trust it, and I don't hate it. There's certain sections I don't trust. What type of person is this that buys into these lies so much so that it's like they wear it on their shoulders?
Well, you know, you mentioned the pandemic and coming out of it initially. So remember, for people in general, now we've never experienced anything like this. I mean, the lockdowns, the sicknesses, the deaths from myself and colleagues, we've never heard so many deaths in our lives and such traumatic deaths and details. So that does something to us. So if you already a person that had maybe a personality disorder, we can get into all the personality disorders, or a person that was more apt to be really a little off, let's just say, you're going to be more apt to allowing yourself to look or at least present as more delusional about things. And it depends on how vulnerable we are. It depends on our ego strength. So with the more stress that we've all been experiencing, some have really tipped over. I explain it like this. Psychopathology is on a continuum. It's a straight line. We're all on it, okay? There's mild, moderate, and severe. We're all on it at some point. And we can't say that I haven't been sad or a little depressed or a little angry or a little this.
No, that's normal.
Right. So for the people that already were, let's say, midway on that line of psychopathology, they're kind of pushed over by something like the pandemic, something like the enormous, at least in my time, I've never experienced such stress and such bipolar in politics, if you will. So I've never just seen anything like that. And as you know, I'm a psychologist in private practice, so I've had both sides. And I'm there, and I take the step is I'm going to help the person. So I'm going to try and understand their anger, or their sadness, or their fears. I'm not going to promote or put my views on top of them. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to help them. But I've heard some outrageous things that I just go along and ask them, you know, what contributes to that, or how do you find that? And, you know, and I hope that they feel better and they become more rational in their thinking. I can hope.
You know what scares me the most is each time, like with these QAnon people, when they reach a line where, for instance, Trump was going to take over here, or this was going to happen here, and we come up to that date, we go past the date, and nothing has happened. What's going to happen when suddenly the giant bubble is burst for all of them? And I realized I was talking to a friend of mine who works for one of the major networks, and he said there's less and less of the QAnon thing going on at the moment anyway. And whoever Q is with QAnon, he seems to have silenced himself, or she has. I don't know if it's a man or a woman, neither does anybody else. What's going to happen when this giant bubble bursts? Like the election was stolen, and then they finally realize, no, it wasn't. Grandma didn't steal the cookies out of the cookie jar. What happens to people when the bubble bursts on them? Do they just freak out completely? Or is it now so ingrained that they're afraid to admit, maybe we are wrong?
You know, it's interesting because I did a show at the very beginning on this when there was such this political stress starting to build up. And one of the things I discussed was frame of reference, and having that frame of reference, correct or not, it doesn't matter. It's a frame of reference that someone will have. And that depends on how you brought up, what you were told, what you saw, you know what I'm saying? So if you only know this, then that's all you're going to see. Even if there are facts completely like this against it, doesn't matter. When someone has that frame of reference, and it's called selective perception.
Yes.
So those two things go hand in hand. And that's why people can create stories and maintain these stories, because their selective perception and their frame of reference is just so that they're not willing to change that. It's too ingrained.
What when you get together with your colleagues, and how lucky they are to have you as a colleague. But when you get together with I've said this before, you have an infectious smile, a beautiful face. You're so kind. I have listened to a couple of your radio shows in the past. Your co-host, but anyway, no, I pick on Alan because he's there. Yes, because he's there, and he's a good guy. He really is a sweetheart. Yeah, he's a sweetheart of a guy. I wouldn't date him, mind you. I mean, I'm weird maybe, but I wouldn't date him. You know, but then again, I'm not a female, so what the heck? But what do you and your colleagues think about all of this? Do they, you know, it's sort of like the rental crisis and the mortgage crisis. When you talk to real estate agents, they all say the same thing. Yes, eventually this is going to calm down and things will level off. Prices may even go down a hair or two when things start to calm down. What solutions are you hearing out there from your colleagues as far as this overall thing that's going on in the world, that it's going to eventually hit the brick wall and it's going to come to an end, or it will slowly fade away?
Well, for some, we really believe that it's never going to fade away. For some, it will. And we're hopeful that, you know, things will get calmer and more stable and they'll get better. But it's true that for some people, again, we're all unique and we're all individuals. We can't say that everyone is going to move forward the same way. They're just not. So we always say to people, don't have these expectations that if we hear good news or if we agree that this is moving forward in a good way, that everyone's going to jump on and believe that and go move forward. That's just not going to happen. There's still going to be conflicts. There's still going to be people that are truly in their own world. And we can't do that, even as good as you are as a clinician, and as much information that I can have in education, psychoeducation. There's some people that'll look at me like I have 6 heads if I say, well, don't you think that this may be? And they look at me and I look at them. Say, okay, we'll agree to disagree on that one.
Yeah. Do you think also too, and this goes back to what we were talking about, like anger issues or coping skills, and divorce brings on its own depressions and everything. I know I went through a divorce myself, although amicable as it was still a loss. I felt something was a failure. Do you think that there are certain ethnic types of people? Now, I'm Greek. I'm 100% full-blooded Greek. And I have had in the past some anger issues that I've learned to deal with and step back and count to 300 if I have to. But do you think that there are some issues that come along with certain ethnic types of people? Italian people, they're very macho. Latinos are very macho. Now, my producer Andres is one of the gentlest gentlemen you'll ever meet in the world. But there are certain ethnic groups, Germans, they're hostile. They're always, they're always looking for, are there certain ethnic groups or cultures that just breed certain issues and inbred? I'm also Jewish. Okay. So I'm born naturally I'm born as a Greek. I want to fight a little bit, but I'm also, as the Jew, I'm born with guilt and gult. So, I mean, it's like, oh, did I hurt you? Did I hurt you? Yeah. Did I hurt you? Did I say something wrong? Oh, I'm sorry. But at the same time, I mean, are there certain things that are inbred within the environment, and not only with where you're born, but the culture from where you come from, even if you're born in New York City?
And you just, even if you're born in New York City, you just said it. We cannot escape our culture. We cannot escape whether you're Jewish or you're Italian or you're Greek or you're Hispanic. I mean, whatever it is, there is something about the culture. We're born a certain way. One of my very good friends, we went in the doctorate program together. He was from Korea. And in Korea, they have a very different way of the way they treat their parents. It's much more respectful. They don't use the eye contact. And there are other Asian cultures that are the same way. Where here, I don't know if you know, nowadays, there's some kids that call their parents by their first name. It wouldn't even be heard of there. So our culture does play a role in, are we more angry or we more dramatic? Do we talk with our hands depending on our culture? What eye contact do we make? So it's so interesting when I'm presented with a new patient, and I always, in my first interview with them, I want to find out, where were you born? Where were your parents born? And where were your grandparents born? Because that really helps me get a comprehensive picture of what is in their background and see if it's impacted them.
It's interesting. You're talking about the Asian cultures, and I spent some time in Asia. Certain members of my family, we were over there fighting a thing called a war, World War II, Korea and Vietnam. But there's one thing that we all had in common that we could talk about. And my cousin Tom, who was in Vietnam just before I was, that even the Vietnamese, they treat their elderly with the utmost respect. You know what culture in this country treats their elderly with the utmost respect? Native Americans. I mean, I've been collecting Native American art for like 30, 35 years, but I know a lot of Native Americans, tons of them. And they treat their elderly. And even if you go down to certain sections in Miami, I'm sure that the Cuban population and the Latin population, they treat their elderly with respect. They listen to their stories. Now, the second and third generation may not so much now, but I know growing up in Miami, as I did, we would listen to the elderly, their stories, because that would be wisdom within their stories. And that's what came from Europe. And because of modernization, we sort of lost that. We kind of go our own way. There
was values and morals, and there was a hierarchy that they abided by, a hierarchy, which has changed very much now. It's kind of more flat, but there was you're talking about the hierarchy, that they knew, because when I would ask someone, it's interesting you bring this up, and they would say, well, because you respect your elders. And when was the last time we really heard that? You respect your elders, anyone?
Yeah. You were talking about using your father's first name. When I got to be about 15 or 16 years old, and we all did, and there were 9 kids, I would call him Dad. He didn't want to be called Father. For some reason, he but I started calling him by his name was Chester Joseph. I'd call him CJ. I'd call my Uncle Harris HP. And it wasn't disrespectful. My father said, he's not being disrespectful. He's calling me. He doesn't have to call me Dad or Daddy. Oh, he hated Daddy. Oh, God, how he hated that. My one sister called him Daddy, even in her 40s. And he looked at her and he said, how old are you? He said, I see these things on my, anyway. But there is a lack of respect. I just want to thank everybody for watching here this afternoon. You're listening to Dr. Janne Lomasky. She is a certified board psychologist, hypnotherapist, author, and radio host at WWN at 95.3 and 96.9 at 11 a.m. on Saturday mornings, along with her co-host, Alan Knight. She has her own private practice in Boca Raton, A Healthy Mind for You. Give them a call at 561-286-8621. You're listening to Mainstream. Gary Allen with you, as I am every Tuesday afternoon. We got some great guests coming up for you. We have Ron McGill from the Miami Zoo coming up in about a month. He's going to be joining us, and we're going to be talking about some events we're going to be doing with him. And we're even in touch with Gary Sinise, my dear friend, and seeing about Gary coming down to Miami. You talked about a lot of different things when you first get a patient and you want to know their background, their family history a little bit, so you get a pinpoint in on how long does it take, and it probably varies, I'm sure, for a patient to finally let go and say, it's my wife, or it's my kids, or it's the job, or it's finances, or it's I'm having sleep problems, or I'm having parenting issues, self-esteem issues. How long does it take generally to break through? And have you had patients where they just, right after my mother died, my father tried to commit suicide. And I took him to psychiatrists and psychologists for a long time, pay out of my own pocket. He would never let go. When people would say, so how are you today, Mr. Romega? I'm okay. He was the World War II generation. Is this current generation, my generation, and maybe a little ahead of me, a little more open about their issues within inside themselves?
I think in general, we are in a generation that's more open, much more open about our emotions and what's going on. But the question you asked, and how long does it take for them to open up? So if it's a 60-minute session, usually the 58th minute, it's amazing, because I share with my patients every time I meet them, I said, a cliffhanger again? Like, we just all this, and actually I have them, they say, you've trained me. I said, I did not train you. You do this on your own, which is, I know you're going to kill me, Dr. J, but I have to tell you. And I'm like, and that's it. You just got it. And of course we have 2 minutes left. So yeah, it takes a while for many people to open up, to really, it's a buildup. Sometimes we need a buildup. We're stuck in our heads. Remember I told you about that mind body? Some people, I'll just stop after 20 minutes and say, okay, we're talking in circles. We've been around this. I want you to drop down. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to tell me what you're feeling in your body. Pay attention to your chest, to your stomach. Sometimes people will just start pop and they'll start crying just from that. Just from that. Wow. Or they'll know right away. I'll stop them talking. I say, just take a minute. I want you to breathe, but I want you to close your eyes and tell me whatever comes up for you. And when I do that, that's when I get what's really going on.
Wow. Where were you when I really needed help when I came home from Vietnam? Where were you, doctor? Huh? You were what? Well, 1974. You were probably just a little girl. You were just a little girl when that was all going on. Why do people degrade each other? Why do we do that? Is it self-esteem issues within ourselves? It's like the bully in high school or the in crowd in high school, the cheerleaders, the football players. I know why they do what they did, because they're even more insecure than we are. But is that the excuse why people become bullies?
People become bullies. It definitely has to do with insecurity. It definitely has to do with rejecting before feeling rejected. It definitely has to do with poor self-esteem. It can also have to do with maybe being bullied themselves. I went many years ago, one of the continuing education courses I took was in bullying. And I was in a huge conference room with hundreds of police officers and attorneys and a couple of judges. And I felt the room was so intense. And there was, for me, way too much testosterone going on in that room.
Yeah.
And when they stood up and spoke, they spoke with such anger and such aggression. I thought, whoa, okay, let's take it easy. And then we had a couple of psychologists that got up and spoke. When the psychologist got up and spoke, one of the psychologists said, rather than you, the adults, speak, can we hear your inner child speak? So can you talk as if you're that 7-year-old or that 9-year-old? And all of a sudden, each person that told their story or what they were going through, it softened. It became more emotional. It became so interesting. You got to understand why they took on this job, or why they did get in fist fights, or why they were a bully, or why now they protect people that are bullied. Very interesting. As adults, we put on many different masks and disguises, but when we get down to the inner child that's always within us, that's where our truth really lies.
Yeah. Sort of like a mom protecting her child. She knows that he did something wrong, but she has to put up the wall to protect him. But sometimes that parent doesn't care that the kid did anything wrong, because she would have done the very same thing, or he would have done the very same thing. That's what disturbs me.
Yes, because it goes down the line. Absolutely. And that's where I've even had in my practice where I've had a parent come in and a child bullied this, and then the parent tried to address it with the parent, and the parent bullied the parent and did not see anything wrong. Eventually you find someone that's healthier and intervenes, but it's a process.
Yes. And I would imagine you probably see a lot of children that are victims in divorces, which is the next topic I wanted to kind of get to. We've got a little bit of about 15 minutes left here on Main Street. I'm Gary Allen, along with Dr. Janne Lomasky, licensed certified psychologist and hypnotherapist. Is that Alan Knight trying to get a hold of you?
Is that? No, I'm surprised. I think he is trying to beep in.
But in particular, I love Alan. I really do. But children feel, when people are getting a divorce, it's like when I was a kid, and I told you earlier about my aunt and uncle passing away.
Yes.
It took me a long time to adjust to living in Florida after living in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, because my thought was, no, they're still alive. They just don't want me anymore. And I found out later through one of my sisters that that's a very common thought that goes through children's minds when they lose an aunt, an uncle, a mama, or a dad. It's no, they're very much gone, but in your mind, you don't want to believe it, and because you don't want to be where you are, you want to be back there. But the truth of the matter is, children are used and bounced back and forth by parents who, frankly, shouldn't be parents to begin with, as far as I'm concerned. If you have to use your children as a weapon in a divorce and not admit that you're the problem, not your children. Now, if you're a stepfather divorcing a mother and these children came into your life and it's just impossible for you, that may be another story. That's for another issue altogether. But if these are your children and your wife and you've been married for 25 years and suddenly you're getting a divorce, it's not the children, because after being married for 25 years, those children are not children anymore. They're almost grown-ups. How do you deal with it? How do you manage to get through to the kids that it's not your fault? It's their fault, whatever the issue may be.
You know, in those cases, I love when I get the child alone and I get just to have the therapy one-on-one. unfortunately, in some cases, when I'm working with the child and the child starts to become more assertive and starts to feel more confident about themselves and wants to kind of not be so, it's usually these codependent type parents too. So when they want to be more independent and they start doing things on their own, the parent either takes them out of therapy or wants to join in with the sessions. And that's really not a good thing. These children really do get hurt, but what I like to do to help them heal is I'll not just work with the children. I will ask for the parent or the parents to come in a separate session, and I will educate the parents and let them know that you focusing on the child or fighting with the child there or saying certain things that may sway the child is just selfishness. Because a lot of times they'll say, well, it's better for my child. But if it's better for your child, it should not be about you. It should just be about the child.
Yeah.
So those are challenging cases. Fortunately, I have a practice where people have been very receptive and they get it. And they actually feel sad and hurt that they brought the children in.
Yeah. It really is sad. Who has a tendency to be more open, men or women, when it comes to their issues?
Men or women? You would think, and I'm not going to answer so quickly, you would think I would say women.
Yeah.
Because women obviously are by nature more emotional, okay?
And nurturing.
But I have to tell you that I have met the most, as you said before, macho men, machismo men that come into my office and they cry as soon as they say, nobody can hear me, right? I always get that from a man. Nobody can hear me, right? I said, no, don't worry. I have the noise out there. And they express themselves. So I don't want people to think that men cannot express themselves. You guys are very good expressing yourselves if you want to, and if you feel safe, and if you feel that you're not going to be judged. Men worry too much about that, where women do not feel judged as like men do when they emote, but men do. Yeah. Because what are you told? Boys don't cry. Remember?
Yeah. Well, that's probably, again, it stems back to the ages where men are this and they're out there and they're the breadwinners and everything else, and women are home with the children and nurturing and everything else. And those roles have sort of reversed in some respects. Mm-hmm. And, but it's like I said just a little bit ago, there are some people that I know that have children that I told them, you shouldn't have never had children. The way you treat those children, mm-hmm. and I'll admit, most of them, they're not in show business. They're in the business world. Mm-hmm. They're when I worked in Chicago in the Attorney General's office, and there was a woman in there, and she was so ambitious. She worked and worked and worked. She was a real workaholic, but she never had time for her husband or her children or anything else. I said, why did you get married and have? She said, because it looks good on the corporate resume.
Oh, wow. That's pretty sad.
And about 10 years ago, I guess, when I got in touch with someone that I used to work with in the AG's office, I said, so how's so-and-so and how's this one? He said, oh, well, she got divorced, and 6 months later, she committed suicide because she couldn't admit, she got into some trouble at being in the attorney. She tried to pull some fast one with some of the Chicago cops.
Wow.
And Chicago police officers are pretty smart little dudes. I know that for a fact. They are pretty smart. As a matter of fact, you want to talk about psychology? Mm-hmm. I worked for the Attorney General in Chicago that put away John Wayne Gacy, and I actually had to sit across from him.
Oh wow! What was that like? Your body must have been crawling.
Oh, I had my wife had bought me a brand new suit. It was a beautiful gray tailored suit. It was beautiful. It was for my birthday, and I was so I went home and took it off and never said anything to Grace. Went to the tailor where she got it made. I had one made of my own, and I got rid of that suit,
Yeah.
the shirt and the tie, and I just replaced them. She never knew the difference. Gracie never. Actually, the only reason she ever married me, she loved me and I loved her, was that she always wanted to be Gracie Allen. And that was the only reason she ever got a hold. And that's how we met. I was on stage performing in Los Angeles. That's the only reason she ever did. But if you want to talk about looking into somebody's eyes, you know how they say you look into somebody's eyes and you see nothing? There was nothing. I mean, doctor, there was nothing. All he wanted to do was see pictures of the boys. He kept asking for those over and over and over again. I was the only communications guy that would travel with the Attorney General to the prison to see him. Number one, because we flew in a small aircraft and most of the staff would get airsick. And B, I was the only one that could tolerate this idiot. After Vietnam, I could just about tolerate anything. As a matter of fact, Vietnam got me ready for my marriage.
Oh boy.
Listen, I could come down to your practice in Boca Raton, which I hope everybody does. Please give Dr. Lomasky a call if you know people that are having issues in their marriage, issues in their lives. This young lady can help them. Give her a call at 561-286-8621. It's called A Healthy Mind for You. And Dr. Lomasky is also on Saturdays with her co-host Alan Knight on WWNN at 95.3 and 96.9 FM at 11 a.m. in the morning down in Boca Raton. It's a great radio show. You should check it out. Oh, I could tell you some stories about prisoners that'll just blow your mind. It brings up a question out of the blue. Have you dealt with a lot of men or women who have been incarcerated?
You are like reading my mind as you were talking about what you just experienced. I remember I was fortunate. I was afforded an opportunity to do a 1.5 years at Jackson Memorial Psychiatric Hospital. And not only did I work with, like, really, as we call it, hardcore psychiatric patients, we're talking, full on schizophrenics. We're talking about, people that needed to be straitjacketed. We're talking about people that were, psychotic. I have stories that were just, I can't even believe it now. When you're in it, you're just in it. But looking back now, it was like mind blowing. And what we also saw were people that were holding before sentencing. So if they were going to go to, is it Cook County, I think, they would be held in the psychiatric at Jackson Memorial first because they didn't have enough space in the jails. And I have to tell you real quick, there was one guy that I remember so much. I can feel it physiologically. I was running a schizophrenia group of 13 schizophrenics, and myself, and I had my supervisor. They were all late. This is in Miami. There was traffic. I said, don't worry. I said, I can run it by myself. And when you get there, you get there. He said to me, oh, don't be overconfident. I'm like, well, I can do it. I can start the group. 13 of us, steel door, lock it behind us. They're all sitting, some of them wearing helmets. Why they wear helmets is because they would take a pen or whatever instrument and try to get the voices out. So a lot of them had to get surgery and stitches because they were always cutting their heads open. So I'm going on in the group. And I mean, this is a full-on group. So you have somebody that's screaming, Jose, Chloe, Jose, talking to their shoulder with different people. We had a lot of different stuff going on. Group is over. I survive. I end the group. I stand up and I hold the lead door like I usually do and let everybody go out. Within a split second, this is the difference between someone who is psychopath, sociopath, and someone who is schizophrenic. Somehow, some way, he managed ever so easily to take the handle of the door, slam it, and gets me right up against the wall within a split second. And said, doctor, what are you going to do now? He was wearing a back brace. He actually broke his back. And within seconds, he was able to, I didn't even see it coming. Thankfully, within seconds, the guards came and put him in a straitjacket and opened the door. And I remember just standing there in a pool of sweat.
God.
Yeah, I became much more hypervigilant after that.
Wow. What is it? They're born like that, right? I mean, schizophrenics and stuff, there's a chemical imbalance somewhere. I mean, that's not something that, It's
considered a thought disorder. So within the brain, it's a thought disorder. So there truly is something that is different in the anatomy of the brain when someone is schizophrenic. Yes.
Wow.
But sociopath, that's different. They have something completely different. It usually starts off with an antisocial personality disorder or a conduct disorder. And then you have to be very careful about becoming sociopath or psychopath, which are really the same thing. And that means they lack remorse and they have no consideration for authority. It's a lot of different stories I can share with you another time.
Listen, I would say one name right now, which would fit right in there, but I don't want to offend anybody out there, but he used to be our president. It fits right in there as far as no remorse for anything. I feel sorry for people like that because eventually it probably does hit them at some point, and maybe just before they die. And oh boy, did I screw this up? Did I? But it's also a learned thing being a sociopath too. We're not born a sociopath, but there are people and there are professions that lend themselves to people who have sociopathic tendencies, maybe not criminal tendencies, but have no remorse about what they do, what they say, just as long as they make the all-American buck. That's pretty much about it. And it's sad in a way. I mean, it truly, truly is. But wow, I mean, it's unbelievable. Doctor, we've got about 4 minutes left of this hour. It's gone by very quickly. I want you to talk to people out there about coming to see you, finding your website, and how you can help people and help them find themselves to live a better, more fulfilled, and happy life.
Okay. Well, you can definitely get in touch with me on my website through my email. It's drjlomasky@gmail.com. That's Dr. drjlomasky@gmail.com. You can call me. My office number, it's an easy one. It's 561-777-2021. It's 561-777-777-2021. And that's my office number. You can even text on that number. I have my secretary, Linda, that will get right back to you, either if you like to text, because texting is big right now, or you can email, and of course, you can always call me. And again, I work with people, not just with anger issues, not just divorce issues, not just children. I work with anxiety and depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm a hypnotherapist. I also do something called EMDR. It has to do with bilateral stimulation, working through any traumas. I'm eager to help you. I'm definitely a hands-on therapist, so I kind of like to give you homework for continuity. But don't worry, I don't yell at you.
Homework.
Yeah. And of course, I look forward to any new person that wants to come in and reach me. Again, Dr. jlomasky@gmail.com or 561-777-2021. And of course, as Gary said, you can reach me on my show every Saturday at 11 a.m. on WWNN Radio.
Yeah, exactly. Have I been giving out the wrong phone number?
I'm not sure where that number came from. Yeah, I'm not sure. It could have been an old one, or maybe it's with my Psychology Today. You can also reach me on Psychology Today. Just look me up, Dr. Janne Lomasky.
Yeah, and I mean it's a great website, and folks, I'm telling you, even after my divorce, I sought out help because to me it was a failure. Now, Grace didn't at all, but I knew it was a failure. When I came home from Vietnam and I was based at Andrews, I went to get help. The military almost required us to go and get help, to talk about PTSD, long before it became the big thing that it is today. We all have issues.
Yeah.
We live in tough times. People are doing 9-to-5 jobs now they never thought they would be doing again. They're going through horrible financial issues that we never thought we'd go through again. Just look at what rents are, mortgages are, and the pay scale is not come anywhere near it. Hell, excuse my French, I was supposed to be living in Miami by now, but the rents are just so high that I just can't get down there yet. I will be there. I will be home. But please contact Dr. Janne, because it's important that you get the help that you need, or the help that your family member needs, or a friend needs. And even if they fight you all the way, try to get them the help that they need. We all need to go and see somebody and talk it out. You need somebody to talk to, even if it isn't Dr. Janne. Maybe it's your priest. Maybe it's your rabbi. I always used to go to rabbis, and I have a priest in my own family, and I won't go talk to him about anything. He's a Greek Orthodox bishop up in Boston. I'll talk to him about things, but it's baseball and football. Hopefully thereabouts. Yeah. Oh yeah. Anyway, listen, I just want to thank you, Dr. Janne, for taking the time to join us here on Mainstreet today. Thank you so very, very much. I want to thank all of you out there so very much for joining us here on Mainstreet. We'll be back next Tuesday at 2 p.m. for another exciting show. We've got some great shows lined up. Like I said, Ron Miguel is going to be joining us in a month. And then I have a surprise in between that I'm not going to tell you anything about, but I will promise you it is going to be a nice surprise. So until next week, would you please do me a favor? Take care of yourselves and each other.